Hey family, welcome to Story Time with an Alpha. My name is Keith Henley. I am your host, and it is so good seeing all of you one more time. Ain't God good? Well, when you're talking about the good Lord, you don't have to have perfect English because man is good. Yes, he is. Well, it is good to see you all, and today we're going to learn about the first black man to receive a pilot's license in America. And his name was James Herman Banning. So the name of our book is called Sprouting Wings by Louisa, Jaggar, and Shari Becker. And this book, and I would like to thank my good friend, Mr. Trey Cherry from Philadelphia, for lending this book to us so that we could read. Thank you, my dear brother. Don't worry, I'll make sure you get it back. Maybe. No, I'm only kidding. But family, this is a very good book. I guarantee you will enjoy this. This book. This is a must-have in your library. This is a must-have in your library. I'm actually going to see if I can find some adult versions of this book and do his story. I would love to portray him. This would be a lot of fun. Absolutely a lot of fun. All right, so let's get back to our story time. So this is Sprouting Wings, the true story of James Herman Banning, the first African-American pilot to fly across the United States. Ooh. All right. One day, he said, I'm going to build a kite big enough to ride on. James Herman Banning always dreamed of touching the sky. But how could a farm boy from Oklahoma find a plane? And how would he learn to fly it? None of the other pilots looked like him. In a journey that would span 3,300 miles, excuse me, take 21 days and inspire a nation, James Herman Banning proved that you can't put barriers on dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, ain't that the truth? Sprouting wings. Don't let anything keep you from achieving your dreams. Nothing or no one. You hear what I'm saying, family? I'm sorry. Back to the story. 5-year-old James Herman Banning toured across the red dirt fields of his family's farm, clutching the string of his homemade kite. He loved the way the wind carried leaves and birds and scraps of paper on its back. And now it was flying his third kite. The first kite had tumbled, then crashed. The second had fluttered and then fallen, breaking on the ground. But his third kite took off. James looked up at the speck of paper on its cross of sticks and watched its cloth tail flap against the deep blue of Canton, Oklahoma's sky. One day, he said, I'm going to build a kite big enough to ride on. In early October 1905, James's father decided it was time to go to town. Going to town days meant crackers, peppermint sticks, and pieces of licorice. Today, though James could tell something was different, men and women, girls and boys were talking loudly, waving their hands, clutching their newspapers. A flying machine, he heard someone call. A flying machine? On the front page of the Oklahoman, James read that the Wright brothers flew their airplane at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, for 16 and a half minutes in the air. James didn't need a big kite to touch the sky. He needed a flying machine. 6 years later, still no flying machines flew over the Banning homestead, but James didn't stop wondering how those mechanical birds stayed up in the air. Luckily, twice a year, Ma and Pa took them all to Guthrie, 82 miles away, to the Elixir Library, the first black library in all of Oklahoma. Here in a ramshackle Victorian field with other people's thrown away books, he found information about flying machines and flight, about lift, force, and drag, about real birdmen taking them into the sky. One newspaper headline said that Charles Walsh, a birdman, was bringing his plane to the local air in Thomas on November 10th, 1911. Thomas was only 8 miles away. On November 10th, the fairground was packed. Walsh's pusher plane swooped low and buzzed the crowd. Then, rat-a-tat-tat, the plane landed. Walsh climbed out to hoops and hollers. Woo, 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 woo. Now I wish I could whistle. And all James could see was the plane. His hands itched to touch the metal bird. James dashed to the plane and climbed through the spider web of wires and cords. Then he sat in the kitchen chair nailed to the floor. He closed his eyes and flew. A boy! A boy is in the plane, people shouted. But James didn't hear them. No, he didn't. He didn't turn to see Walsh running up to the pusher. Hey, you! Get away from there, Walsh yelled. James scrambled out of the plane and ran, but he could still smell the oil and gas, feel the controls in his hand. He was still flying. On June 28th, 1914, the Great War broke out in Europe. Planes covered the fronts of newspapers and magazines. Bristol Type 22s, the Fokker Eindeckers, Sopwith Camels at the Gym Theater for 5 cents or an egg. Yes, a chicken egg. Can you imagine paying a chicken egg to go see the movies? Okay. James watched newsreels with awe as fighter planes swooped through the air. When James graduated from Favre High School, he did what none of his friends or family had ever done before. He applied to college. He was only one of 7 black students accepted into Iowa State that year. Though his grades were good, money was tight, so he could only go for 1 year. Even so, he held on to his dream of becoming a birdman. When Banning was 21, he opened his own business in Ames, Iowa, Banning Auto Company. He fixed motorcycles and automobiles and farm equipment, all the while looking for someone who would teach him to fly. These were birdmen, and there were birdmen and birdwomen in Iowa, designing airplanes, building airfields, and starting flight schools. But no one would teach Banning, a black man. Then, one day, a man pushed a broken motorcycle into Banning's shop. Banning noticed the military aviator wings on the man's leather jacket. His name was Lieutenant Raymond Fisher, and he was a pilot. He asked Fisher if he would teach him to fly. Well, Lieutenant Fisher didn't care that Banning was black. He only cared that Banning wanted to fly. This time, the answer was yes. Banning met Fisher at dawn, and both men climbed into Fisher's Curtiss Jenny biplane. Banning gently pushed the throttle full forward. Then the engine roared as the plane hopscotched down the runway. The Jenny's nose lifted and caught the wind under her wings. Banning could hear the roar and the smell the oil and taste the wind. A year later, it was time for him to solo. But on April 12th, 1926, when Banning arrived at Fisher's Field, he found a mangled metal bird. Fisher's Jenny had crashed, and Fisher had died that very morning. Banning was heartbroken. He'd lost his friend and the one person who helped him take to the skies. Banning was still needed solo hours to earn his pilot's license, but no one would lend him an aeroplane, so he decided to build his own. He bought a spare engine at an auction, purchased a Jenny fuselage, and scavenged wires, cords, and automobile parts. He put the pieces together in a nearby cow pasture with the help of 5 friends. Banning built his first plane. But was it safe to fly? Banning wasn't sure. Every day he climbed into his plane, started the motor, partially opened the throttle, and slowly drove it in circles on the ground. This became the joke, the town joke. Banning and his ground plane. Then, one Saturday afternoon, Banning warmed up the motor, taxied to the end of the field, and pushed the throttle wide open. The full power of the motor propelled him down the field far faster than he expected. The field's high fence suddenly appeared in front of him. He yanked back on the stick, and up he went. He was flying. I have sprouted wings, James Herman Banning shouted to the clouds. Banning received his pilot's license, number 1324. But he still wanted more. He wanted to learn to barnstorm, to loop the loop, to barrel roll, and to make a dead stick landing. His first loops didn't loop, and his rolls didn't roll. But Banning didn't give up. Soon he was circling the sky and rolling across the clouds. He had taught himself to barnstorm. In California, 1,719 miles away, a man named William Powell dreamed that freedom in the air would one day lead to freedom on the ground. He wanted to open a flight school for black men and women. So Powell opened the Bessie Coleman Aerial Club and went looking for a black pilot. He sent a letter to the Negro Associated Press, and it appeared in the California Eagle, the New York Amsterdam News, the Pittsburgh Courier, and the Chicago Defender. It also appeared in the Iowa Bystander in November of 1929. As soon as Banning read Powell's letter, he knew he was the pilot Powell needed. He began packing that very day and moved to Los Angeles. Powell hired Banning on the spot as chief pilot. In the next 3 years, Banning taught air-minded black men and women to fly and to perform aerobatic stunts. On September the 7th, 1931, Powell and Banning put on their very first black air show. Have you guys ever been to an air show? Oh my God, it is absolutely fascinating. Really exciting. You really gotta go. Okay, I'm gonna stop playing, but you really gotta go. In 1932, Banning left the Aerial Club to follow a new dream. He wanted to be the first black man to fly from Los Angeles to New York. All he needed was a plane. His friend Arthur Dennis had a dilapidated Eagle Rock from a 14-year-old with a 14-year-old engine. It needed a lot of work. A lot of work. Thomas Cox Allen, a local aeroplane mechanic, didn't have a pilot's license, but he knew how to make engines, even old engines, roar. He also had $200. Banning and Allen didn't get along well, but they shared the hope of being the first black men to fly across country. They fixed the Eagle Rock, replacing pistons, spark plugs, and the overhead action valve. When they were done, they only had $25 left. Banning and Allen scoured a map and looked for towns and cities where they knew people, where people had skin the color of theirs. They charted a route through towns and cities where it would be safe for them to land. At every stop, family, friends, townspeople, city folk, church congregations, anyone and everyone who helped them with a meal, a place to sleep, or gas money would get to sign their names on the gold book, the wings of the Eagle Rock. Gee, said Allen, we'll be just like hobos, begging our way. Fine, said Banning. That gives me an idea. You know what? We'll call ourselves the Flying Hobos. On September 19th, 1932, Banning and Allen took off from Dicer Airport in Los Angeles. They flew from Alhambra to Riverside, California, from Yuma to Tucson, Arizona. Everywhere they went, people helped however they could, providing money, meals, transportation, lodging, gas, oil, repairs, and sometimes even spare plane parts. But in Lordsburg, New Mexico, where the copper mines were empty and no one had any money, the Eagle Rock ran out of gas. Allen sold his fancy suit, his only suit, to a Mr. R.C. Hightower for $10. Just enough money to get them to El Paso, Texas. Banning and Allen flew on. 19 names were written on the gold book. 19 friends were flying with them. They flew from Wink to Midland, then on to Wichita Falls, Texas. But as soon as they flew over the Guadalupe Mountains, they ran into fog so heavy they couldn't see their wingtips. Whew. We lucked through that one, said Banning when he came out the fog. Then continued to El Reno, Oklahoma, where Banning's brother, Archibald, lived. As they headed to Oklahoma City, 30 names were written on the gold book. 30 friends flying with them. They flew from Tulsa to Miami, Oklahoma, then to Carthage, Missouri. At a pit stop in St. Louis, the tired bird's engine gave out again. A local mechanic school rebuilt it as a class project. In Terre Haute, Indiana, they fixed a broken pushrod. In Columbus, Ohio, the people of the Second Baptist Church gave them $5. Every stop brought them closer to New York, but they still had over 500 miles to go. As they approached Cambridge, Ohio, the Eagle Rock's engine sputtered, the plane dropped, the engine rattled, then it died. There was a haystack on one side of them and a barn on the other. Banning flew sideways between the two, then righted the plane, pulling the stick all the way back. As the wheels hit the ground, the plane bounced like a jackrabbit. Banning had made a perfect dead stick landing. The townspeople came running. Many had never seen an aeroplane. None had ever seen a black man fly. The steel in our motor is so old, it's crystallized. 2 rocker arms went out. Whew, Banning said. With the help of the townspeople, black and white, Banning and Allen got the Eagle Rock back in the air. Banning thanked the people with a loop and a barrel roll. The flying hobos flew on with 68 names inscribed on the gold book. 68 friends flying with them. The Eagle Rock's engine died again as they landed in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home to the Pittsburgh Courier. Banning had been writing about the flight for the newspaper, coast to coast, by the way of the aerial highways. The editor, Mr. Robert Lee Van, said he would pay to fix the Eagle Rock if they tossed 150,000 Vote for Roosevelt campaign flyers out of the plane. Banning agreed. They headed to York, then to Philadelphia, then on to West Trenton, New Jersey, where they spent the night. Now, 72 names were written on the gold book. There is not 1 inch of space on our old Eagle Rock that is not written on, said Banning. On October 9th, 1932, at 9:15 in the morning, Banning and Allen gassed up the Eagle Rock. They checked the engine and the oil. Allen had propped the propeller. Banning took off. Soon they were in New York. Banning looped around Lady Liberty once to let her know, hoo-hoo, hey, we made it. Banning and Allen landed in Valley Stream, New York, after traveling for 21 days with the help of 24 communities. They had used 410 gallons of gas and spent $150 to fly 3,300 miles to the other side of the country. That night, they celebrated with the biggest stars in Harlem: Cab Calloway, Mrs. Bill Bojangles Robinson, and Louis Armstrong. After years of dreaming, Banning and Allen were stars too. Wasn't that an amazing story? Absolutely amazing. Oh man, you know what? I am going to see if I can find me some more books on Mr. Banning, and I think I'm going to create a show around him. Yes, that would be an exciting show. An absolutely exciting show. Well, also, I wanted to share with you guys, are you familiar with Bessie Coleman? Now, in the book, Mr. Powell in California had opened up a flight school, and he named it after Bessie Coleman. Do you guys know who Bessie Coleman is? Well, Bessie Coleman was the first black female pilot. Although she was not able to get her pilot's license here in the United States, she had to go to France to get her pilot's license. She got her pilot's license. She was also the first international person to receive her pilot's license. But after she received her pilot's license, she came back to the United States. And of course, no one was going to let a black woman fly. So in order to pay the bills, she became a stunt pilot. And that's how her life ended. She was, like I said, she was a stunt pilot, but she was the first. And after her came Mr. Banning. Well, family, I hope you all had a wonderful time. I did. And again, I want to thank my boy, Mr. Trey, and Trey, Terry, and Philly. Yo, brother. Thank you, man. He's going to be an alpha man. I'm going to guarantee that brother, he is on his way to becoming an alpha man. But on top of that, we really would like to thank you all for spending some time with me today. And I hope you enjoyed today's book. I can't wait to share. The next set of books with you all. And again, parents, if you do have a book or the children have a particular book they would love for me to read on the channel, please just send me a little email. I will put my email information again in the description, and I'll put the information so that you guys can send me some information about reading some books online, so I can give you a little shout out. All right. Well, family, that's the end of today's read. I hope you have enjoyed yourself like I have enjoyed being here with you. And I am truly looking forward to our next meeting. Until then, please do me a favor. Continue to read. Because remember, words set freedom. Words provide freedom. Knowledge is freedom. Salvation is freedom. But we're not going to talk about religion. We are going to talk about reading. And it is so important. It is absolutely so important. So until the next time, Keith Henley, your boy with Alpha Storytime with an Alpha. Y'all meet me here again next time next week. Next week, we're going to do this again, all right, with another book. Another book. Until then, y'all be blessed. Thank you. Bye.